We're good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Online LEDCON. This is the Parliamentary Procedure forum presentation. My name is Kazi Rabbe, and with me is
David Jeffalone. Hello.
And so throughout this presentation, we'll give you an overview of what Parliamentary Procedure is and also how you can use it. All right. And so essentially, Parliamentary Procedure is a set of rules for conducting business at meetings and public gatherings. And it is essential because it allows everyone to be heard and to make decisions without confusion. As far as why it's important, it can be adapted to fit the needs of virtually any organization, and is a basic handbook of operation for many clubs and other groups. And it really just ensures democratic rule, protection of rights, flexibility, and a fair hearing for everyone. Because in organizations and clubs, one of the most important things is making sure that the needs of everyone and the voices of everyone is heard. So then everyone's needs can really be adapted to accordingly. And there are different manuals for parliamentary procedure. The most widespread being and most widely used being Robert's Rules of Order, and that's also what the Texas Oklahoma District of Key Club International uses.
All right, so you're at a meeting and you've got everyone together and you have a goal today, right? So your goal is to change the name of our district, Texas Oklahoma, to David and Kazi's Key Club. This is a great idea, right? And this is what we want to do today. So how do we go about doing that in Robert's Rules of Order? So you go ahead and you make yourself a motion. A motion is a proposal that the entire membership to take action or stance on an issue. So that's basically a fancy way of saying, this is something I want to do. This is something the entire group wants to do, right? So to go ahead and make that motion, you're going to get recognized by the chair, right? You're going to make your motion. After you've made that motion, called a main motion, you have to get a second. That's someone else saying, hey, I agree with you. Let's go ahead and start talking about that. So that moves you on to the next section. You're discussing and you're amending, right? So you can talk about the issue, see what everyone's stance is, and then you can either change your main motion or you can just go ahead and move on to voting, right? So if you're discussing, you can go on and be like, okay, I don't like David and Kazi's Key Club, right? How about we change it to Kazi and David's Key Club, right? And then you can go ahead and vote on that. But we'll get that into that later. And then you go on to voting. So.
All right. And so one of the things you need to remember is always state a motion affirmatively. And so essentially this means they need to say, I move that we, rather than I move that we do not. Because if you say, I move that we do not change it to David and Kazi's Key Club, there are a limitless number of possibilities of other things you can change it to. And so stating your motions affirmatively, make sure that you do your business very punctually, and it is much more efficient that way. You also need to avoid personalities and stay on your subject. Let's see. After you make your motion, another member will second your motion, or the chairman will call for a second. And if there is no second, then your motion will fail. And so the time for you to speak about your motion, basically justifying it and everything, is at this point in time after you've already presented your motion. And so whoever presents the motion first is always allowed to speak first. And whenever you guys are having a discussion, all comments need to be directed at the chairman. So this essentially allows for the debate not to be directed at one person, or like the criticism to be at one person. That way, instead of criticizing, for example, like someone who presented a motion, you'd be criticizing the motion itself. And also, no member can speak twice to the same issue until everyone's already spoken, or everyone who wants to speak has spoken. And so this essentially ensures that everyone who wants to speak has had their voices heard.
All right, and building on that, so like, for example, if you're confused on the third bullet, if you wanted to talk about what the last person had said, you could be like, the speaker before me. And that's how you'd say it. You never really want to say their name. You just say things towards the chair. So after you've gone through your debate, you can either debate or move. So So you get a couple of options here, and these will just help you move your business and to conduct it very orderly. So we got the first thing up here. It's going to be motion to a table. So you would move to a table if you wanted to take something that was more pressing, like a more pressing issue that came up, right? So say we're having our meeting and someone runs in the room and they're like, guys, we have to get this business done, right? We would move, I would move to table Kazi's and David's Key Club, and that would just have us so that we can take it up later, right? Then you have postpone definitely, right? So postpone definitely just goes ahead and it gives you a time, right? So you're like, hey, actually, let's not talk about this. We'll move it 30 minutes later, or we'll move it an hour later, right? It makes sure that the motion will be talked about again, but it will have a set time to it, right? So it will be in the meeting, it just will be later in the meeting. Then we've got postpone indefinitely, which is use an attempt to kill a motion. For Key Club, we don't typically use postpone indefinitely as we're trying to get most of our business done within the meeting. But for your personal club, you can definitely postpone indefinitely. That just puts it away until who knows, you know, like it may never be brought up again. So it's essentially killing your motion. So then we got your amending. So you have a main motion on the table, and then you can introduce the secondary motion of amending, like we said earlier. So if we wanted to do Kazi and David's thing, that itself becomes like a own tiny little motion. So you've got your main motion of changing the name to David and Kazi's, right? But if you want to amend, you move to amend, which is a secondary motion, and it has to be voted on, right? So we'll see it later in a table, things that are debatable and things that are undebatable. Amending is one of these secondary motions that can be debated. So you can be like, oh, what if I want it like this? And then you move that amendment and then you can talk about it, right? And you can't have more than 2 amendments. So you can't like amend an amendment, because then that starts to make it a little bit foggy. So what you'll typically do is if you feel like you need to amend the main motion more than 2 times, you can just go through and move to previous question, which will end the debate. And if everyone like is agreeing that we need a new main motion, this motion should pass. And you can go ahead and make a new main motion so that you don't like make it very confusing. These rules are put in place to make sure that everything is very clear and there's no confusion, so that way business can be done. Like I said, previous question ends debate. It is an undebatable motion. So if you move to previous question, say like we've been talking about whether or not we should change our name for so long. If you move to previous question, everyone's just sick of it, they should pass this motion, and this will immediately force the voting on the main motion. So it's a secondary motion that ends debate on the main motion, and it will go ahead and force voting. So we've got a couple of voting methods here. So most commonly, the chair will typically use voice. So the chair will ask those in favor, and they will say aye, and those opposed will say no, right? And it isn't really an exact count. So the chairman just kind of sits there and listens to the volume, and it's the chair's discretion. Now, if you as a member don't feel like that decision isn't like what it actually was, you can then go ahead and say division. And division is a motion that basically forces the chair to say, okay, maybe I was wrong. Let's go ahead and do a visual vote. So members then go like raise your hand in favor or don't, and they kind of visually see who is for it and who's against it. Then you've got roll call, which is the most granular way of getting these votes. So you go through the roster and you say everyone's name and you make sure that you have their vote. So like say if it was just me and Kazi in the room and there was another chair, the chair would be Kazi and Kazi would say yes or no, and then it would say David, and then be me yes or no. It's a very exact way of voting.
All right, and so the other two voting methods, one of them is general consent. And so general consent is essentially when a motion is not likely to be opposed, the chairman will say if there's no objection. And so the membership shows agreement by their silence. And if one person says, I object, then the item must be put in vote. And so this is usually used whenever you have a motion that you think will pass unanimously or close to it. And then the next is ballot. And so with this, members will write their vote on a slip of paper, and this ensures secrecy. And for example, this is used for voting for the district staff, since you won't necessarily want your voting preferences to be revealed.
And on all 5 of these voting methods, they are invoked by the chair. So like the chair can decide whether or not they want to use any of these 3 or any of these 2. And members can petition to the chair asking to vote by ballot, but there's generally specific ways that you will choose the voting method depending on the situation. Like ballot is used in elections, while general consent is whenever the chair feels like it. A general consent is typically formatted as, with no objection, this motion does pass, right? And if you object, you must say I object, and that will then force it to a different form of voting, most commonly voice, but that's just how it works.
All right, so next is interruptions. And so you can very sparingly interrupt the speaker, but at the times you can, there are really 4 reasons for doing so. And so the first one is point of order. And so you use point of order if you see a breach of the rules. So say, for example, one of the rules is once you are recognized, you have to state your name and division, right? And then you present your motion. So say I stand up, I say I move to change the name, then someone can say point of order because I didn't state my name and division, right? And so this basically ensures that everyone's following the rules at the meeting. The next is point of information, and so you use this to get information about certain business during the meeting. So say, for example, you need more clarity on a subject, or you need more clarity on a motion that's presented. You could say point of information, and then ask away. The next is point of personal privilege. So this is, say, for example, if you can't hear, safety reasons, maybe for comfort, so say the room is too cold, then you can quickly, or you need to go to the restroom. So you say point of personal privilege, the room is very cold in here, is there anything we can do? The next is point of parliamentary inquiry. And so this, when you have questions pertaining to the rules, so rules regarding parliamentary procedure. So say, for example, you're about to have a vote, or anything along the lines of that, you can say point of parliamentary inquiry, and just to ask about how it will all be conducted if you are unknowing of it. Let's see, and then on the next slide, we have a table with an overview of everything. So David can go over all this.
So these are just a couple of your secondary motions and a couple main motions here. So basically, they just kind of give an overview of what you can do. So they have the motions, they have what you want to do, right, on the left. And then the you say portion is everything that you would say. So say I move that, or I move to table the motion. It's telling you the specific wording of how you would say that in a meeting. Next column here, we've got seconded. So this is telling you which ones need to be seconded, because certain motions can just go on the floor without a second. Then going on, you have debatable. So these tell you which secondary and main motions can be debated on. So stuff like postpone discussion, you can go ahead and talk about that. But on the next slide here, the point of order and stuff like that, you cannot debate them, right? You cannot debate that maybe this was wrong, right? Because the rules are set and you would just end up bickering, right? And then you have amendable. So there are certain things that are not amendable. So these are just actions, and that's pretty much it. And then so you have over here the vote required. So during your meeting, you will come to have these different parts where it's like, okay, do I like how many people do I need to have this thing passed, right? So a majority in the situation is just one more than half of the group, right? So it's most of the people, but not an overwhelming amount. And then so for stuff like previous question, you need to have a 2/3 majority, which is referred to as a supermajority of the people in the room want to do the thing. And the reason that previous question does have that is because you want to make sure that everyone's been heard. So you do have a supermajority there. And then things for reconsideration are, can they be put away and then brought back, right? Or can we redo this vote? Those are the reconsiderations. So it tells you yes or no on them. And that's pretty much it. That's all we really have today. I wanted to expand on point of personal privilege up here. In parliamentary inquiry, say if you have a point of parliamentary inquiry, you don't be afraid to use that one. That's like, if you have something that you want to do, but you don't know how to say it, you just say, hey, point of parliamentary inquiry, I want to change what we're voting on. And someone will come there and help you and tell you exactly what to say. Point of personal privilege is just like you saying, hey, it's most commonly used for saying if I don't know what we're voting on, right? So if you couldn't hear what was being said, and you like immediately everyone else has ran into a vote, you use a point of personal privilege to just clarify and just make sure that stuff has been done.
And so with the tables, feel free to, if you want to pause and like take note of it, because there is a lot of information on the tables that we weren't, and if we just went through it one by one, it'd take a lot of time. But I know for example, your first meeting or something like that, if you want to institute parliamentary procedure in your organization or anything, you could print these out and hand it to all your members, and you guys could briefly talk about it or just take note of it, and it'll make it much easier to institute it later on. And then also here's our contact information if you have any questions or anything. Definitely let us know if you need any help with anything, because we will certainly be able to help you out. And so as far as parliamentary procedure, it's definitely something that can take a little bit of time to get used to. Even people who are chairs, like even they get called out for mistakes. And so as long as you just practice it, there will be mistakes, but as long as you learn from them, parliamentary procedure is a great way to ensure that your club is doing the most in order to make sure that everyone's voice is being heard and you are doing business in the most orderly and efficient
manner. Yeah, and then I do have up here, 1 second, I'm waiting for this to go away. Robert's Rules does have a website that you can look at. So if you have some issues and you need help out, you can come over here. I think they also have the tables that you can download and print somewhere in here. But I think that's all I had. So I guess thank you guys for watching. Sorry that we couldn't do this in person. It's very sad. Kazi, anything you want to add?
No, not really. Just thank you all for tuning in and watching this on your own time. It means a lot.
All right. You guys have a good rest of your day.